Hi guys, so I want to give you a background on my own journey through CBTI, just in case it is something that you are planning to do but you're not so sure about what CBTI actually is. But before I do that, I'm going to give you a little background on my own insomnia. I'm going to give you a background on how I experienced the course, my thoughts and feelings on it, and ultimately let you know how successful it was. So in terms of my own background with insomnia, real chronic, severe insomnia since I was about 14 years old. So essentially I was a little bit of an odd kid at school when I was bullied. And that's where the trigger of insomnia came from. But as I later learned on my CBTI course, the trigger of your own sleep problem really doesn't matter. It's the behaviours and the thought patterns that come afterwards which then turn this into long-term chronic insomnia. But yeah, had it since I was 14 years old. And it developed the same way it does, for everyone. Just had one poor night of sleep, which then turned into two. Became incredibly anxious and stressed and just started then doing loads of things to try and make myself sleep. Loads of clock watching in the night time. And before I knew it, I was taking hot baths, eating the kiwi fruits. I was, so anxious being in bed when I was in, that heart rate increase, body temperature increase, and it never really went away properly after that. I had periods where it was better, periods where it was really bad, but for 20 years, it was kind of this yo-yo where it was kind of like either really dreadful, awful sleep, where it felt like I was getting 1 or 2 hours a night, or slightly better sleep, which was kind of manageable, but I never had that good quality, consistent, regular sleep, which, everyone else just takes for granted. And I suppose the fear was really there attached to the bed and the bedroom. Even an hour before going to bed, I'd feel my heart rate increase because just the thought of lying in it and just wondering whether or not tonight was going to be the night where I actually slept was just something that caused me a huge amount of anxiety. So I used to call my bed a torture chamber because that was essentially how it felt to me. It was like I was being tortured every single night. Some nights I wasn't, some nights I'd sleep well, but I'm sure you know how that feels, that kind of sleep Russian roulette that you get. And really, I think with insomnia, I think what a lot of people don't understand who have never had sleep problems, it's not just a case that you don't sleep well at night time. It became, like I'm sure it is for you, a complete obsession. So every single waking minute I was thinking about the night to come. I was constantly on Google trying to find the next sleep supplement, GABA, L-theanine, lettuce water, that magical meditation trick that would suddenly fix my sleep problem, just all the time hoping to find that next quick fix which would suddenly solve my sleep problem. And essentially I had quite an enjoyable active life, but it just got narrower and narrower and narrower because of my insomnia. All the things that I used to enjoy, like surfing in the evenings, I couldn't do because I didn't want to be too stimulated before bed. I could never go out to the pub later in the evening because I didn't want to be too stimulated. I couldn't eat late because I'd been told I shouldn't eat late in a restaurant. I never wanted to stay in a hotel because the fear of actually going to an uncontrolled environment would always be there. If I was spending time with my friends in the evening, there'd always be that thought in the back of my head of, what's going to happen tonight with my sleep? It was just something that took over and controlled my entire life. Eventually, it led to depression, severe anxiety, the loss of my business, divorce, and me living in a van. And so, it really did strip a lot away from me. I think to kind of illustrate how severe it was, once I'd slept well camping once in the UK, so I decided that the only way I could ever sleep for the rest of my life was to move to America and live in a teepee tent in order to try and sleep. Of course it didn't work, but that's just how obsessed I got with my sleep. So 20 years of this. And it was around about the age of, I suppose, about 32 that I stumbled across CBTI. And it was a video that I'd seen online. And for the first time, this video, it just seemed to make sense. It just seemed to be different from all the usual stuff that I'd tried before, because it seemed to just simplify everything. So I booked my course, but even when I booked that course, you know, I didn't expect it to ever work. I just thought, you know what, I've tried everything else, I might as well give this a go, but I just don't think it's going to work, because what I believe CBTI was essentially therapy, because it's kind of misleading the name, cognitive behavioural therapy. So what I thought it was, I was going to go and unpick all my thought patterns that led to my insomnia. There would be some anxiety reduction techniques, and it would essentially be the same as counselling, which I'd tried 1,000 times before to try and fix my sleep. It hadn't worked. But that's what I thought CBTI was. But I suppose I had enough confidence from that video that I'd seen that it maybe was slightly different and was worth a go. And I was just happy to try anything at this point, because, you know, I'd done the acupuncture, I'd done the meditation, so I just thought, okay, well, this one, I know it's not going to work, but why not? If I get a 5% improvement in my sleep, it will probably be worth it. And by that time, literally, I would have given my, well, I didn't have a house at the time, but I'd have given my car, I'd have given my arm, literally I'd have swapped my entire rest of my life for the 5 years worth of good sleep. So anything was worth a go. And my initial CBTI appointment, I went to it very kind of guarded like that, because I had no confidence that it would work. And literally, I think that changed within about 5 minutes of speaking to the person who was helping me. She was absolutely incredible. And I think it really clicked for me how this was so different when for the first time I finally felt understood. I think I said something like, I just never feel sleepy. And she said, yeah, people with insomnia never do. And then she described how I felt absolutely perfectly. Tired but wired, fatigued, anxious, stressed, worried all the time, but that feeling of your eyes closing and feeling sleepy, I never had. And literally every kind of thought and feeling I'd had about insomnia, she'd heard it 1,000 times before. And so I suppose that was how my confidence was built, that this was actually going to be something that could help me. But even then, you know, I kind of went in thinking I knew everything there was about sleep, because I thought I did. You know, I'd read about how kiwi fruits contain serotonin, which then converts to melatonin. I'd read about GABA, I'd read about L-theanine, I'd read about this relaxation technique, the military technique. I'd done it all. If I could write a PhD on sleep hacks, tips and tricks, then I would be able to do that. But the actual core of what insomnia is, I completely missed that, because there's so much nonsense around sleep, because it's all about sleep hygiene. CBTI, which does work so incredibly well, just get buried beneath all this crap. And so essentially, I suppose what she did was just so comforting. She kind of grabbed everything that I'd done in the past, the kiwi fruit, the meditation, the not drinking caffeine after 3 p.m, and not eating late in a restaurant, all these things I was doing to try and control, protect my sleep. She grabbed hold of all of it, just picked it up, dumped it in the bin, and then was just like, right, let's actually get to the root cause of what insomnia is. And the root cause of insomnia is nothing like what you see online. It's all about that fear, that obsession, that control, that worry. And actually what you do with CBTI is about 99% of it is just getting rid of all the other crap that you've been trying, which just makes your insomnia far worse. And it just simplifies everything. And the first thing she did, well, re-education around sleep. So she taught me about the sleep drive. She taught me about the body clock. She taught me how there's nothing you can do to force and control your sleep. She taught me how meditation will never lead to sleep. All it can do is create relaxation. And if that natural drive to sleep is there, then you will sleep. I learned about the fight and flight stress response and how it's the anxiety and that racing heart, that racing mind, which is masking that natural drive to sleep. So a lot of it was a lot of re-education about what insomnia actually is, how the trigger of insomnia doesn't matter, how everything you do, which is just a short hack, tip or trick, actually erodes your confidence that you can ever sleep again. She taught me how the idea that you need to catch up on sleep is a complete myth. You actually only need to catch up on a third of the hours lost if you sleep. Things like sleep cycle. So a lot of it was a lot of re-education around sleep. So check all the other videos on my channel if you want to know more about that. But really, I think we kicked off with behavioural changes in the first instance. So I was put on bedtime restriction very early on. I was put on something which is called stimulus control, which is if you feel that anxiety, that fear, that worry, that stress creeping up, you leave the bed in the bedroom and return to bed when you feel sleepy again. I was put on that, and really I was just put on some very simple behavioural changes. I went home, didn't expect them to work, and literally within about 5 days of doing bedtime restriction, I went from someone who was trying everything they possibly could to force themselves to sleep to somebody who could literally not keep their eyes open. I was standing up against the wall trying to keep my eyes open. I was on the sofa slapping myself. I had to go for a walk around the time to go from someone who could not keep from forcing themselves to sleep to someone who couldn't keep their eyes open. It was just such an incredible feeling. I describe it as being like witchcraft because it literally felt like that. I was just thinking, what on earth have you done to me? How is this possible? And for the first time, I suppose, in 20 years, I was actually looking forward to going to bed. And when I was in bed, instead of it taking me hours to fall asleep, I was out like that. And what it did, it rebuilt my pattern of sleep, it strengthened my sleep drive, and it gave me the confidence that I wasn't broken, there wasn't anything wrong with me, and that I could sleep. And so it's so effective, as was stimulus control, which was leaving the bed in the bedroom. There's other alternatives to that, which are on my channel called counter control. But these are just to break down that fear and anxiety that you attach to your bed. So helpful to me. And it wasn't like I started my course and suddenly I started sleeping better. I suppose what was different was there was a change in how I was thinking about sleep. There was a change in what was happening to me during the daytime. So for the first time during the day, I was feeling sleepy during the day. For the first time in my life, I was feeling sleepy as nighttime approached. So my consistency of sleep was massively improving. And because I could start seeing these slow changes happening, the anxiety and fear around my sleep came down as well. And so for the first time, I actually started to get the kind of confidence that what I was doing was actually real, was actually tangible, and could actually help me. So that, I suppose, was the first kind of week or 2 weeks on my course. And as I kind of progressed through it, there was a lot of more re-education around sleep, a lot of activities that I did in order to deal with the anxiety, the obsession, the control, the thought patterns around sleep. So a lot of written exercises that I was doing to help deal with that. And something that I wasn't expecting, which was kind of, so I like to call it exposure therapy, deliberately doing things that I would never have done when I had my insomnia. So I can't ever eat late in a restaurant because if I do that, I won't sleep. Well, suddenly on my course, I was now eating late in a restaurant. Not so that I would sleep well on that night, just to prove to my brain that I wasn't going to allow insomnia to push me around. I wasn't going to allow insomnia to control me anymore. You become kind of fearless against your insomnia. So when you've got insomnia, you just kind of cower away from it. And it just becomes this thing that you're always trying to appease. So on this CBTI course, you kind of have your shoulders back and you kind of face it square on. And it's because you've got that confidence back that you can sleep. It's because you've been taught and it's been proven to you that there's nothing wrong with you. It's because you've got that education of, actually, you know what? I can have a poor night of sleep and everything isn't going to implode. I am going to be okay, because I know that the next day my sleep drive is just going to be stronger and I'm just going to be fine no matter what happens. So a lot of it just takes the fear away from your insomnia. It wasn't anything like what I was expecting, but I was just so glad that I found it, because it's probably not probably the most important thing I've ever done in my entire life. I don't know if I'd be here, truthfully, if it wasn't for that. And I know that sounds quite dramatic, but just the struggle was just so intense that I couldn't see myself dealing with that for like 40 years. It was just such a horrible thing. And I think the expectation, everything in life is that things should be fast, quick, and you'll get instant results. That's not what CBTI is. It's a slow kind of undoing of your negative thought patterns. It's a slow kind of replacement of old habits and behaviors with new ones. And it's never kind of a linear progress. It wasn't for me. It was loads of ups and downs. There were bits where I just panicked during it and I thought everything was lost and everything was broken, and then suddenly things would improve. And it's kind of like that, I think, with everyone. And when I finished the course, it wasn't like I was fixed and I was now a good sleeper. It was more a case that I had the tools now. I knew what to do, and as long as I knew to keep going down the same path, then eventually I would be free of my insomnia. And so my course lasted for 8 weeks. If I'm really honestly truthful, it's probably a good 6 months, maybe even to 9, even a year, before I could honestly say that I never worried about sleep again. I never thought about it, but I didn't have any kind of attachment to my insomnia. And it's not like I'm a perfect sleeper now, you know. What I am is a normal sleeper, a good sleeper. So good sleepers, they don't sleep well every single night. They get the occasional poor night of sleep. But what I know now to do is, instead of that real kind of strong reaction that I used to have when I get a poor night of sleep, I just know it's normal. I know not to panic. I know not to trip and fall down that rabbit hole. I know not to look at Andrew Huberman, Matthew Walker. I know not to grab the next supplement bottle. I know just as long as I keep my behaviors and habits consistent, regular, my short-term sleep problem will right itself. So really, I can honestly say that I no longer have insomnia, not because I'm a perfect sleeper, just because I know what normal sleep is and how to get that. And I know that there will be ups and downs with my sleep, but as long as I just remain completely neutral towards it, I will never fall back down that rabbit hole again. So to answer the question in this video, is CBTI worth it? Well, put it this way: chronic insomniac for 20 years. Within 8 weeks, I was 90% better. Within 6 months, 99. After a year, well, look at me now. I've now trained in sleep medicine. I've now trained in behavioural sleep medicine. I've worked for the NHS, MOD, Ministry of Justice, 2 books on insomnia. So not only have I overcome my own insomnia, I've probably now helped thousands of people sleep by doing, well, training the exact same thing that the person who helped me, taught me, essentially. So yeah, I'd say it was pretty successful. So if there's any part of you even considering doing CBTI, just do it. Do it with the right person. Hopefully that will be me, because this is what I now offer to people. I've got an online course as well, or it's through my books, or it's through one-to-ones. But yeah, bin everything else around sleep. Get to the core of what insomnia is and just get stuck into it, because it works. Not immediately, but with consistency, repetition, you'll get there. I don't care how long you've had insomnia. Decades, you can be free of it, but with the right help and the right behavioural changes. All right, really hope this video has been helpful to you, and I'll see you on the next one.